Okay, so I'm also going to go ahead and talk to you now about the stem changers. If it's a AR or ER stem changing verb, then it has the same pattern as it does in the present indicative as it does in the present subjunctive, meaning that if it's an E to IE stem changer in the present tense, it's going to be a present indicative tense. It's going to be an E to IE stem changer in the subjunctive, and that stem change is going to happen everywhere, but for nosotros and vosotros. And that's the same for those that end in ER. So that's like pensar, devolver. Devolver was an ODUE. It changed everywhere but in the nosotros and vosotros form. Okay. If it is an if it's an IR stem changer, then it's going to have two different stem changes. In the everywhere but the nosotros and vosotros, it's going to have its present indicative stem change. So like, for example, sentir is an E to IE, so it's an E to IE everywhere but nosotros and vosotros. Nosotros and vosotros are going to have the same stem changer as the preterite. So so it's going to be E to I. And that happens, so like dormir is an ODUE, it's going to be present everywhere but in nosotros vosotros, which is going to be the same as the preterite. So I will circle this here. Okay, so we are going to say okay, so that's going to have the preterites. Let's not do that. Okay, and then everywhere else it's going to be the present.
And I couldn't see it. Just said chapter 1, blah blah blah. So we're supposed to look at that, or was there supposed to be something?
We went to New Middle, so that may have been in there this summer if I didn't copy over.
I got the feeling it was basically there.
Okay, right here. So yeah, so it just didn't copy over. So let's.
Okay, so the nosotros and vosotros forms. Okay, so let's go ahead and practice. That's the only way that we can get this to make most sense. So here we're supposed to choose between the two verbs. So poder is to be able to, pedir is to ask for. So Juan me recomienda que probably ask for a bistec. Okay, so we're going to put pedir here. Oopsies.
I'll make sure it's in there though.
Okay, again, it's advice. So we're going to put, because in our main clause, we're being given advice. In our dependent clause, we're going to use the subjunctive. And it's because Juan is recommending that I do this. Remember that if you have an indirect object pronoun in your main clause, that becomes the subject of your dependent clause. So it's going to be for I. Okay, and since it's I, this is an IR verb, but if you look down at IR verbs, if it's
So this was her baby, like she made all these changes to this class. That's why.
if it's I, then okay, so if it's an IR verb and it's in the yo form, that means we're going to use the present tense endings, which is still, it doesn't really matter for an E to I stem changer because of the fact that the present and the preterite endings are the same. So we are going to make it PID, that's what we're going to add our endings to, and since this is an R verb, we add an A, pida. Juan me recomienda que pida. El profesor quiere que sus estudiantes recordar preferir todo el vocabulario para el examen. Makes most sense to say that they remember. Recordar. Again, this is want. The professor wants that his students. So if we've got want in the main clause, then we're going to conjugate for the subject of the dependent clause, the subject that comes after the K, and we're going to put it in the subjunctive tense. So this is for his students. It's going to be they. So for they, you would change your AR to an EN instead of an AN, and it's an O. This is an AR verb. So if you go up here, it's for they. So we don't have to worry about not doing a stem change. We do need to do the stem change. Recordar is an O to UE, so that O is going to change to a UE as well. And we've got recuerden. El entrenador quiere que su equipo perder jugar bien. He probably doesn't want them to lose well. He wants them to win. Play well. Jugar, okay? Again, we've got want in our main clause, so in our we're going to conjugate our verb for the subject of the dependent clause, which is going to be the subject that comes after the K, which is su equipo. And then we are going to, because this is an AR verb and it's su equipo, or we would conjugate it for he, we are going to need to make our stem change. Our stem change here is a UE, okay? And then the opposite endings for his team is an E. But we would lose our sound of G here, so you also have to add a U here to keep that G sound. Mi mamá no quiere que nosotros gustar dormir en el sofá. Makes most sense. She doesn't want us sleeping there. Dormir. Okay, so again, we've got want in our main clause. So we're going to conjugate for the subjunctive in our dependent clause. This is an IR verb. And this time the subject is nosotros. So if we look down here for nosotros, we have to use the stem change that's in the preterite tense, which would be just an O to a U. So I'm going to change that O to a U, and I am going to add, instead of IMOS, AMOS. Okay, in this one it says, los clientes le piden al mesero que servir pensar la ensalada primero. They're going to want it to be served, which is servir. Again, this is imposing influence on another person, so you're going to put the subject in the dependent clause into the subjunctive form. This is an IR verb. It's an E to I, so it doesn't matter because the spelling change for the preterite, if you'll notice over here with pedir, the spelling change, the stem change for the preterite and the present is the same. That E is going to change to an I, and then we're going to conjugate for our indirect object pronoun in the main clause. So the clients ask the waiter, they're wanting him to serve the salad first, so we're going to conjugate for him, which would be sirva. Necesitamos que la clase empezar temprano. We need, again, it's imposing influence. We need that the class starts early, so that's going to be empezar. We're going to conjugate for class because if there is a want or influence in the main clause, you conjugate for the subject of the dependent clause, the subject that comes after the K, into the subjunctive tense. This is an E to IE. It's not nosotros, so we do make that change. IE. And then we're going to add la clase, which would be an E. We can't have a Z next to an E, so we're going to change our Z to a C. El agente de viajes nos sugiere que blank asientos de ventanilla. That's pedir. It's an E to I. This is an IR, but if it's an E to I, it's going to be the same. We're going to change that E to an I, and we're going to conjugate for the indirect object pronoun in the main clause, which is nos, so we're going to make it pidamos. La gente de viajes nos sugiere que pidamos.